Hey everyone, welcome back to Milk Drunk. I'm Tabria, your host and fellow new mom. So today, this episode features two incredible female leaders who are redefining the cancer support space through their own remarkable lives and the Breasties, which is the first all-inclusive nonprofit organization that creates community for survivors, previvors, stage 4 thrivers, and caregivers impacted by breast and gynecologic cancers. Since 2018, the Breasties mission has been to support and improve the experiences of the cancer community. And joining us today is the Breasties co-founder and chief content officer, Majsiak, and the Breasties chief community officer, Trish Michelle. Bree is a successful and compassionate founder, writer, and editor with a background in health journalism. She received her master's degree from Columbia's Graduate School of Journalism, and in 2019, Bree was a National Cancer Institute Reporting Fellow. Her work has been featured in the New York Times, including a powerful photo that I'll ask her about later. And Trish is a cancer thriver, mother, and healthcare professional who served as an ambassador for the New York chapter of the Breasties. An advocate for breast cancer awareness and representation, Trish is actively fighting systems to create an inclusive, progressive movement toward equity, and she's the founder of Reclaim October, a community-led movement focused on reclaiming the Breast Cancer Awareness Month narrative. Welcome to Milk Drunk, Bree and Tish. It's such an honor to have you both.
Wow.
Didn't you love that intro?
I was like, who's that?
No, seriously. I'm like, I need them to write me an intro just so I can refer back if I'm ever feeling down on myself.
Wow. Well, thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate you coming here. It really means a lot that you're here today. And I can't wait to delve into everything that the Breasties is all about and hear more about your personal stories as well. Okay, so let's start with what brought the two of you all together. Please tell me the origin story of the Breasties.
Okay, well, you got this.
Yeah. Okay, so the beginning of the Breasties really starts with our stories, which we'll dive into. But I guess I'll start with my story a little bit. Breast cancer was a really big part of my life from a young age. My mom was diagnosed with breast cancer after giving birth to my younger brother. And so she noticed that he wouldn't breastfeed from one side. And she became very concerned and had a feeling that something was wrong, but was repeatedly dismissed by her primary care provider. And by the time that her issues were addressed and imaging was provided, it was too late. So she was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer and unfortunately passed away a few months later.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. And so she had this just incredibly difficult time getting support. And so she passed away when I was 5. My younger brother, I think, was just about 1. And I also have an older brother who was 8 or 9 at the time. And so I was well aware from a young age that breast cancer could potentially impact my life as well, but it was really hard to understand what that meant. And I also just had a lot of like residual trauma and fear in healthcare settings, knowing her experience. And so right about the time that I was in grad school, I was really looking at genetic testing and trying to get information. I was having screenings and benign scares from a very young age, I think from like age 18. So I knew like I needed to start being proactive, but I didn't know where information or resources were for that. And that was kind of the beginning, early stages of the Breasties. We would all kind of gather in New York to meet. Our co-founder, Paige, had started sharing her story on social media of having a preventative mastectomy. And people were just flocking to find community. And we were meeting up in New York. Trish was at all of these meetups. We were meeting in yoga studios. We were meeting at bars. And we just wanted community with each other. And what was so interesting about us gathering was, yes, we all had different stories. There was no space that was all-inclusive before that welcomed people who are survivors, previvors like myself acting preventatively, caregivers, stage 4 thrivers. There was nothing that welcomed everyone. Traditionally, the support space for people impacted by breast or gynecologic cancer divides you. If you're a survivor, you're here. If you're a previvor, you're here. If you're stage 4, you're here. If you're a caregiver, here. Never are you supposed to come together. And for us in our stories, they were so fluid. I was navigating grief. I didn't know yet about preventative surgeries and care. And it was really like being able to find the beginning of this community that gave me so much information. So I eventually decided to have preventative mastectomy. But I did get kind of inconclusive genetic testing results, which is something we could talk about later. But I did really was able to make these decisions because of this community. So that was kind of the beginning stages of the Breasties. And there's a few other things in the timeline, but I'll let you, Trish.
No, I mean, I benefited from the gathering this community, right? Like it wasn't the Breasties yet, right? It was just us gathering. And I received a cancer diagnosis. Well, let's go back and say, I found my lump and I began the process. I was met with such resistance when I found my original lump. The doctor did not believe me. I had to advocate for getting appointments to even be seen by him. They were like, "You're young. Why are you even here?" And it was, quite frankly, me putting my hand over his and directing him to the lump that kind of kickstarted my journey with breast cancer. I was eventually found to be stage 3 invasive ductal carcinoma. And as someone who's young, navigating like single parenthood with 2 kind of young kids, it was hard to find folks that looked like me that were having the same experience. I went to a couple of support groups and they were failed missions. I was youngest by decades and I was the only Black person in that space. And they couldn't relate, right? They were talking about grandkids and reunions, and I was trying to figure out supporting my young kids in dating. And so I took to the internet, and that's when I found Paige, who was sharing her story, Allie and Bree, who were kind of gathering these young people in New York City that didn't exactly have the same stories I did, but so much overlap, right? Like, I didn't understand that someone could have a mastectomy but not have cancer, and it was so bizarre. So I kind of was more curious. That brought me in, and it was such a gift for me, and I feel a necessary part of my healing to have this community. As important as chemo is to have this community. And so I just started kind of, like Bree said, hanging out all the time, showing up at these bars and at these meeting places and finding such strength in story sharing. And that's what we're really most proud of as part of the Breasties, is to be this landing spot, this like safe space for people who are undergoing all the challenges of being impacted by breast and GYN cancer.
I think it's amazing that you all just did this yourselves via social media and just created this community on your own. There wasn't a space for you out there, and you made it happen for yourselves. And I think that's such a beautiful thing. And I think particularly with women, we're always doing that because we're not being listened to, we're not being heard. So we have to create our community on our own and force people to listen to us. And it's really unfortunate that in both of your situations, your mom and you were met with such resistance for such a serious concern. And do you find that happens often with the people who are in your community? Really?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's actually like, it's something that hit me a few years ago, which, we've now been, running the organization for almost 6 years. And, I was well aware of my mom's story and aware of like the disparities and how her care was inadequate. And then really like on our retreats, on our events, like hearing from community members that those are still everyday experiences. Those are still lived experiences every single day. It's absolutely still what happens. And it's extremely concerning because there are like new developments that should be changing those gaps that seem to just still be expanding.
Absolutely. Yes, I think it's definitely race plays a factor. Age plays a factor, right? It's just like, okay, young girl, you're dismissed at the door and you kind of have to fight. And I found so many times that my doctor, when I would ask hard questions, they were like, how did you find out about it? Like they were shocked that one could come to an appointment educated on their illness, on their disease. And so it's it's something that really impacts our community. Yeah,
it blows my mind, especially because it's happening in women younger and younger, as time goes on. And even with, I don't know, I don't have much history with breast cancer and gyn cancer specifically, but I know I have a few family members who had colon cancer. And I know that is happening, especially younger people as well. I know a few people who are under 40 who passed away from it. And it's because they weren't heard or listened to. And you would just think that our, healthcare system would do something about it and be open-minded. And it's just so frustrating. How do you encourage people to speak up for themselves? Because I know my only real experience is obviously giving birth and trying to advocate for myself in that space. And I had a midwife, and she was very supportive in that way. So I had that backbone. But a lot of people, they don't have that kind of support. So what would be your advice on advocating for yourself in these medical situations?
Oh, now you really want to get us activated.
I feel like you have to kick this off.
I'm like, give him a slow start, Brie. And I'll bring it on home.
Yeah, okay.
I'll bring it on home.
Trish's taught me a lot about self-advocacy, truly. And I would say it's so hard. I think like there's so much that can make it challenging. Like I had the hardest time advocating for myself, even though I was extremely privileged. I had community, I had resources, I had information. I would always look at the doctor and be like, whatever they say is the word, is what whatever they say, I'm going to listen to. And I kept being pushed down when I wanted my preventative mastectomy because of my strong family history. So I learned that I am not currently a genetic carrier for like a BRCA gene or some of the well-known genetic variants that can increase your risk of breast or gynecologic cancer. But I had a few doctors tell me, based on your family history, there's probably something there that we can't find yet. And because my mom was a woman of color, it's harder to have information right now around genetics and people of color. And so I was aware of these gaps, but I would go into the doctor's office and they would say, "You're fine. You don't need to worry about this. A mastectomy is not going to be like a boob job, and don't you want to breastfeed your children?" And so I was always struggling with like, what's the truth? And I'm trying to listen to what people are telling me. And from a young age, I was told either you're not doing enough, you have this strong family history, you need to be doing screenings every few months, to then other doctors saying, you're being a little dramatic here, you don't need to do all of this. And so this whiplash was like truly affecting me. Like it was really, really affecting me. And I started realizing like I have to advocate for myself. Like what I'm feeling is true. And for me, like very practically in the community, it was bringing community members with me. One of our original co-founders came with me to one of my appointments where I finally realized I was at a breaking point with my care team. And this community member was a stage 4 community member. So it really took me hearing from her, like, Brie, you deserve better care than this, to realize like, oh, I do deserve better care than that. Because I think we're told, don't take up too much space. Don't
Absolutely. I think that's it. Exactly. I think it is hard work. I've been cancer-free for many years, but I still have to like psych myself up, almost like it's game time, right? I'm like, all right, getting in there. And you have to sometimes embrace your inner bitch. Like that's really what I've had to do because it's not a game, it's life and death. And so it's harder because we're socialized as women, right? Particularly to kind of, again, don't take up space, play small, the doctor knows best. It's harder as a person of color, Black woman or brown woman too, to like assert yourself. It's hard for me as a child of immigrants because that's definitely part of how I was raised, which is like, you do not cause fuss, you do not challenge authority. So having that all kind of swirling in your head, you're at war within yourself until I realized like, it's these folks 9 to 5 and they get to like file the little file away at the end of the workday and go home. You have to live in this body. And so someone's like mistake or careless disregard can result in your death or like a real, And so I was like, all right, you know what? They're not going to come for Thanksgiving dinner. So I don't have to worry about being their friend. So if they don't like me, then I'll be the patient that they don't like. I'll be the patient that when they see me coming down the hall, they're like, oh, here she comes. But that's okay because everyone will sit up a little straighter and know that this is the patient that we really have to like dot our I's and cross our T's.
Yeah. And
so often I talk to breasties that say like, Trish, I don't know how to do it. I don't know how you do it. I'm like, girl, I got to work on it every time too. Because it does, you feel such a resistance and such a challenge. But on the other side of it, I feel so relieved. I feel like, all right, I did my part. And I can like breathe easy knowing that I showed up prepared. So it is not easy. It's daily practice, but it's worth it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I totally relate because I just got my blood work done and it's totally unrelated, but it's just something else. I knew something wasn't right. And my doctor was like, you're fine. Like you have nothing to worry about. You're in, complete health. And I'm like, I don't know. I
Mhm.
don't feel right. And you are your own best advocate. You know your body best, regardless of a doctor with a medical degree. I understand we trust them. We have to
Yes.
implicitly because of their profession. But at the same time, they don't know everything that's going on with your body. They haven't lived in your body
Absolutely.
your entire life. So you have to just get that courage, put your
Mhm.
big girl pants on,
Yep.
and just find it
true.
in you to just speak up for yourself. Because like you said, you're not going home with these people.
Yep.
You know, this is a one-off situation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like the doctor that my original primary care that dismissed me, that said I didn't have cancer, that didn't want to write me the prescription to get my first mammogram, that I was
Mhm.
like, all right, well, document it. So it could be on record that you said
Yeah,
no.
exactly.
That's when all of a sudden it was like, whoa, whoa, whoa,
Right.
whoa, 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 you know? But that's not the way I wanted to be proven right.
Of
right? It was
course.
like,
You don't want to have to do
I was
that,
right,
but-
you're wrong. I do have cancer. But when I did go back to like snatch up my files and like fire him, that's when people are shuffling and looking away. And that's what it is, right? Like
Yeah.
they could be wrong and continue to live their lives.
Yes.
And meanwhile, that might not be your story. So yeah, I felt very vindicated.
Yeah.
Going back in there.
This is random, but I was scrolling on your Instagram and I saw that, I don't know who it was, but someone was talking about the different types of gynecological cancer and how cervical is the one that the pap smear checks for. I didn't know that. I thought,
mhm.
cervical cancer, that's it. And the pap smear, that checks for it. You're cleared, you're good to go. But then there's 4 others that you have to worry about. So it's all about education, right? But where do you go to even check for those other types of cancers out there? Or how do you navigate that world to make sure that you're okay? It really makes me nervous because when I saw it, I was like, okay, who do I need to see just to be sure we're up to date with everything,
Absolutely.
Yeah, and nobody really like breaks it down for you. I think for us, we're really passionate about the idea of knowing you're normal. And for us, that means like doing a monthly self-breast exam, learning like what that means, what to look for, what to feel for, just being body aware, knowing like what your normal is because it's different for each person so that you can be aware when something changes to then follow up with a healthcare provider. So for us, that includes like talking about your family history. Is there a family history of cancer? Both on the maternal or paternal side can impact your health history. And then breast self-exams monthly. And then we're very passionate about raising awareness of gynecologic cancer symptoms because they're very often mistaken for something else.
Yeah.
So going to your OB regularly, doing pap smears, talking to them about like if there is a family history, they can recommend you for additional screening of a more comprehensive like GYN screening. But pap smears,
For sure.
breast self-exams, being just more on top of it. Because even for ourselves, we realize like how it just feels like so much to keep up with. And
Right.
doing skin checks.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many things, especially in our community of people being high risk or
Yes.
having like unclear family histories. So really advocating for yourself because screenings right now typically don't really recognize you till you're over 40.
Right.
And the majority of our community members are diagnosed under 40 and find their own lumps,
Yep.
find their own symptoms. So you really have to be your own best advocate.
Yeah, you have to be dialed in. I think that's really what we're saying. You have to know your body well,
Yeah.
be able to spot things, and have dialogue and relationship with your team, right? Like, and be on top of it. Like, oh, it's time for your annual. One of the little hacks that we have, and our co-founder Paige has shared too, is trying to schedule your annuals around your birthday. So that way you don't forget.
Yeah,
So
that's
if you
smart.
know, like, all right, my birthday is in July. So
Yeah.
July is the month to go see your GYN, have your annual physical, to get all your shots, all your things.
Yeah.
So that you don't lose track of time and look up and say, oh, shoot, it's been like 2 years since my last GYN appointment.
Yeah.
And too much time has passed.
Yeah,
So
that's
part of it.
That's really good to know. I'm going to put that in my arsenal.
Yeah.
So
But it's so true. And preventative health is so important. And right now I have a primary care now. I have not had a primary care as an adult, but once I had a child, I was like, let me get myself in order.
Yeah.
And I also have a holistic doctor to, because, I
Excellent.
feel like mine in particular, she's more nurturing and more caring, I feel like, and is more receptive to any concerns that I have. And I'm very fortunate that I can pay out of pocket to go see her because, of course, holistic care providers aren't covered by insurance, unfortunately. But it's all about being preventative and intuitively knowing
Yes.
what's going on. I like that in the Breasties, it's bringing together both breast and gynecological cancers. Is there a reason that you did that?
You know, when the organization started, we had all come together and realized that like we all had these intersections, and breast and gynecologic was a big one, because often when you're high risk for one, you're also high risk for another. Or if you've had a breast cancer diagnosis, you're often starting to do screening for ovarian cancers and other GYN cancers. So there's a big correlation, and then there's a lot of genetic variants that our community members have that increase both, in addition to other cancers, but those are very common ones. So, and we have a lot of community members who've had double diagnoses, who've had a breast cancer diagnosis, an ovarian cancer diagnosis. So we just wanted to do more to support that intersection.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm like a case point in it, because I, as a breast cancer survivor, was like, phew, I like cleared that hurdle. And then some of my aftercares, when I realized, oh, I have ovarian cysts, I have the odds for having ovarian cancer has multiplied. So it definitely was, I was grateful to have this community to ask some questions and be a little bit more proactive in my my journey.
Yeah. So Trish is what we would call, like, obviously a breast cancer survivor, but then also a GYN previvor.
Can you you mentioned it before, but can you just define previvor really quick? Because I had never heard that before.
Yes. Yeah. So it's anyone who's actively acting to prevent cancer.
Okay, yes.
So it's like a play on survivor. There's previvors, caregivers, stage 4 thrivers. And so previvors is just this idea that whatever you're doing to like prevent your health, it doesn't have to be a surgery. I think there's been a misconception in the past that only people who've had like preventative mastectomies can be previvors.
Yeah.
And that can be a hard headspace to be in if you just want to be on top of screening. You know, there's so many different pathways you can take. So it's really anyone who is acting to prevent. And very often it's because of a family history or a personal
history.
diagnosis.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
so I was a breast cancer survivor, but due to cysts and having this cancer history, the odds of having some sort of ovarian cancer were higher. And so I had a oophorectomy to combat that odds of having ovarian cancer. So I'm an ovarian previvor.
Okay, interesting. Whoever's doing the copy and coming up with all these terms is doing a great job. I love that. I really appreciate having you both on here. Both of you are women of color. And I know that our voices are especially suppressed when it comes to the medical space, especially. How do you think we can address the inequities in the healthcare system for BIPOC people specifically? You know, I just had my first child, and obviously the maternal death rate amongst Black women is higher than any other. And that's one reason that I chose to have a midwife, and I had a home birth and everything was fine. But was met with some resistance from my OBs. But I try to be as best of an advocate as I can just by speaking up. But what else can we do? Because it seems like we're still not being heard, regardless of all of the data that's out there about it. I don't know.
No, it's such a tricky one. I think what we at the Breasties are trying to do is we have such an opportunity. Like, I know that after I was done with my active treatment, I felt so energized about wanting to create change, right? And so we often joke like, oh, Breasties is a lifestyle. But what we mean is that like so many people who navigate this, whether they're privileged or not, realize like how, forgive me, maybe we can do that, fucked up the system is. And so they are dialed in and tapped in and want to be part of the change. And so we're quite proud of the DEI work that we're doing, because we feel like if we can start with our community, the ripple effects, they'll now go back to their doctors, to their healthcare team, and like have different awareness as they move through the system and realize like how fucked up it is, and how even if it's incremental change, it's some change.
I think that's where we've noticed like the biggest room to make impact, and it's like the most heartbreaking work, and it's you know, the fact that people of color are less likely to be diagnosed with breast cancer, but are more likely to die of the disease is just like, it's just mind-blowing. It's like, why is that still the case, right? Like, breast cancer's been around for a while now. There's millions and millions, if not billions of dollars that go into research each year. Why are these gaps still there? And we're seeing these gaps every single day, living these gaps. Like, it's extremely concerning. And I would say like something we're also really passionate about, like we talked about previvors. I think the access to prevention needs to increase. It shouldn't be so hard to get genetic testing.
Yeah.
There should be more information around genetic testing. I think people see like prevention as like this luxury or like something that, you know, there's a lot out there that can feel like, you know, why do previvors need to be part of these conversations? And that's something we're passionate about, as well as like really pushing to include previvors in conversations and access to preventative care. And I think that starts with like, you know, if genetics are this new science that's out, like why are there still disparities in a new science?
Yeah.
That's where I get confused. It's like how, if, you know, if genetics are coming onto the scene now and people are learning, you know, Angelina Jolie brought a lot of attention to preventative mastectomies. Why isn't this accessible to all and equitable for all if this is a new thing? Okay, breast cancer, we're learning about disparities now. Sure. But then genetics are new. So why is genetics struggling in the same way to reach people of color?
Yeah.
So that's something we're very passionate about. Like Trish said, our DEI committee, our community members, there's so many initiatives and things that we're part of to try to create these changes. But I think it really starts with like the self-advocacy piece and like talking about your family history. A lot of people don't know that genetic testing is available or something that they could do. So I think it's just really like increasing as much education as we can.
Yeah. I always say that allyship is so important when it comes to any type of work. And there have been so many celebrities that have been outspoken about breast cancer. And I feel like we need more medical professionals who are also brave enough to speak up about it, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but I know that they're working under such a constrained system that is very resistant to change. And I'm sure there's a lot of, you know, concerns there, but I wish we had more medical professionals who were on this side, you know. I feel like that would really help pave the way. But like you said, looking out for ourselves, speaking up for others, I definitely think that's all we can do. And it's progress, you know, little by little.
Conversations, right? It's just like, you know, particularly immigrant or Black or whatever. It's just like, did grandma die of natural causes or did grandma die of cancer? Because it's what's very much still taboo. It's very much still taboo in a lot of cultures to talk about. So just really having these candid conversations and being curious about the family history, that can begin the steps to kind of be more active in your care.
Yeah.
It's to have these answers.
I agree.
Or seek the answers.
So I want to talk a little bit about your partnership with Bobbie. I don't want to say what you do every year. I want you to explain it and what that entails.
Okay, great.
I
I keep kicking it. Well, here's the thing. I like I said, I was a community member. I'm like a year and a half into the team. So this is the Bobbie partnership is about what, 5 years?
Yeah.
5 years, and it's the jewel in our crown.
Yes.
It's like by which we pattern a lot of our partnerships is our Bobbie partnership.
Yeah, Bobbie's definitely the gold standard
Yeah.
for partnerships. And Bobbie cares so much about our community since day one. We didn't even know that like a partnership like this was possible. Like someone really wants to be there and like fight with you.
Yeah.
We didn't know that that was something like someone would want to do.
Wait, someone else cares beside us?
Right.
Yeah. And that's been the energy since day one. One of our community members, Megan Koziel, she is a breast cancer survivor, and she, after having her baby, shared a sign in her hospital room that said no breastfeeding zone, because there's, you know, a stigma or an energy that like after you have a baby, you breastfeed. And a lot of people in our community, that can be extremely triggering.
I see.
You know, I've had a mastectomy. I physically can't. I don't need to be reminded of it.
Yeah.
And, you know, and so she had this sign in her hospital room, and it went viral, and I believe was shared with Bobbie, and was, you know, they were connected, Bobbie and Megan, and started bringing awareness to this gap that exists in formula for people impacted by breast and gynecologic cancer. And so our co-founder, Allie, she was really the catalyst for this partnership. She reached out to Bobbie, sharing her own story and sharing about like how this formula gap was impacting her and her baby post-cancer that she was having. And Bobbie just got involved from the start and started doing a Bobbie and Breasties partnership where every year they fund formula for Bobbie Breasties in the community. So people who have been impacted by breast or gynecologic cancer, who are survivors, previvors, stage 4 thrivers, and to really try to make this more accessible for parents feeding their kids after cancer, or just by being impacted by cancer. And it's grown tremendously. We're on our 5th cohort.
Correct.
And it's one of, like Trish said, it's like our favorite partnership ever. They support us as an organization. They're, advocating to increase coverage, to really make this like an issue that everyone needs to pay attention to.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's so mind-blowing, it feels like, when we talk about, yes, we physically cannot.
Yes.
And to be asked that, you'd be triggered, right? And
Totally.
That was what Megan was happening. It was happening with her, that, are you ready to breastfeed? I cannot. And it's devastating to be kind of like pestered about it.
Yeah.
So we're very grateful that we're in this like now 5th cohort, and it creates such community, like just seeing the Bobbie Breasties lean on each other. It's a beautiful thing. So we're quite proud of it.
I love that. And it's coming up this October, is that right?
Yeah.
Yes. So that's really exciting. And they've partnered with Carly Kloss, Katie Couric in the past. So I think it's such an amazing initiative that you both are doing. And I love Bobbie's work that they do. And they're just so for parents and trying to support them in every way. It's rare that you see brands do things like that. That's true advocacy work and trying to make change where you can.
Absolutely.
It's one thing to just retweet or repost something, but they are actually making these connections and impacting individual families' lives. So I love Bobbie, obviously.
We love it. Our favorite moments is just telling the Bobbie Breasties that they're part of the cohort.
Yes.
That, Katie was on and Carly was on, and just seeing people like weep openly because they're so grateful. It's like our favorite, one of our favorite moments.
It really is. There's so much like rewriting the narrative that Bobbie's helping community members do, because it can be such a stigma, such a triggering topic. And we still hear people all the time say like, I'm, getting ready for my mastectomy, and doctors are saying, well, don't you want to breastfeed? Don't you want to have these children? And it's like, no, like we want to be around for our children.
Yeah.
And that's not what we're concerned about. So Bobbie's really helping create that support for community members to feel that. Like there's other options out there.
Correct.
Is like truly changing so many lives.
Yeah.
We're so grateful. Huge shout out to Allie, because she's really paved the way for like this to really be something that more and more people have access to.
Yeah. Bobbie is a huge advocate for family paid leave as well. And I wanted to touch on the gap of formula feeding, because I was able to get a free breast pump with my insurance. But now hearing about you all stories and just everyone who's impacted by this, that doesn't make sense. We don't need a breast pump. We can, and we don't need to have this reminder of it either. So can you speak more to the formula gap when it comes to healthcare?
Yeah, imagine, you touched on it, but how devastating it is that you've gone through this cancer diagnosis, or you've had this preventative surgery so as to not have cancer. And you're now looking at your beautiful baby, and you're being peppered left and right about this. And then, yes, you have a breast pump that is a paperweight, and there's no support for you. And so this is exactly where we jump in and say that there's a gap here that we need to fill by having it covered for people impacted by breast and GYN cancer.
Agreed.
The Affordable Care Act covers breast pumps for all. So why wouldn't formula be covered for people who are impacted by cancer and physically can't feed their babies, or choose not to based on different treatment and, courses of their treatment. So.
And that's been part of our advocacy in just getting the stories out there, because so many people just don't know that it's a thing. We were fortunate enough to we were fortunate enough to have a great write-up in the New York Times earlier this year that talks about how challenging it has been to be a person impacted by cancer and reproduction and all these different things, and not being able to feed your children is difficult. And if you're gone through a cancer diagnosis, that's also the financial impact of not being able to. So having Bobbie kind of lead the charge in getting it covered. It's in front of Congress, they said right now.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Fingers
crossed.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. And so we just can continue to amplify the stories of those impacted by it, and hope that we can create some change with our partnership.
Yeah, I love that. Well, the Breasties and Bobbie for Change started an online petition to address the formula feeding gap. and support insurance equity for parents impacted by breast and gynecologic cancer. So please visit change.org to sign it or click in the link in the episode description. So Trish, can you talk to me about pinkwashing, Reclaim October, and why you founded it?
Oh, okay. Now I'm activated again. It was about like year 3 of my cancer survivorship, meaning when I was done with active treatment. And it was like September. So October was just rolling around. Mm-hmm. And I was seeing a lot of ads of people saying like, October is coming, almost like a parade was coming into town. This excitement and how they're going to be selling hair extensions to like make noise and raise funds for October. And for some reason, it just hit me different. And I was curious because I didn't know the word. I didn't understand what pinkwashing was, but I felt what I call an ick. Mm-hmm. That I was like, okay, these people are raising money or something for cancer. Like, who had cancer? And like, how much money are they raising? So I was just curious and did a little bit of a deep dive into this account that I had seen at Instagram and had no questions answered. So no one had cancer. No one they knew had cancer. The funds that were being raised, no one was saying like how much of it was. And I said, well, that's really fucked up.
Yeah.
Honestly, because again, and now as a cancer survivor, I realized that like, oh, is this a money grab? And so that ick led me to saying like, okay, we are the ones impacted by it. That honestly, we should be the one telling our stories. We should be leading the charge in this. And it shouldn't be a way for folks to make money. Like it should be a truly an awareness campaign, or if you are raising funds, for people who are actually doing the work. And I just kind of said offhand to a friend, we should really reclaim October as our own. And so it began this kind of like grassroots, boots on the ground initiative with folks impacted by breast cancer, Breasties, that felt fired up and wanted to get involved in it, whether it was just sharing their stories or raising funds for people who were just buying gas cards for people to get to treatment or like helping to babysit folks that were going into treatment. And so we do it for 1 month, October 1st to the end of the month, where we share stories, where we raise funds, where we make noise. And we've raised almost like $200,000.
Wow.
In like the 4 Octobers that we've done it.
That's amazing.
And I love it. I feel almost like, how like Mariah Carey gets all like jazzed for Christmas.
Yeah.
And she's like the queen of Christmas. I'm like, am I the queen of breast cancer?
You are. You 100% are.
I think I might be. Only because like I've heard from so many people that also get super duper triggered as someone impacted. Like they go underground because it's just like too much pink everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, and not everyone has a happily ever after story.
Yeah.
So, and folks don't like to share that. Like, I know myself sometimes as a survivor, I'm like, my story's not sob story enough to get some attention. You know what I mean? And so everyone has a space, everyone has a voice, everyone is important, and everyone gets activated. So it's truly the proudest thing that I am a part of, that I've started. And so we raise funds for stage 4 research too, because we very much believe that supporting thrivers, supporting research, supporting stage 4 benefits everyone. That's like true allyship, right?
Yeah.
Amplifying and uplifting one makes us all benefit.
Totally.
And so that's a very important cornerstone of the work. So,
Yes.
I am very much activated.
Yes.
And yeah, it's my pride and joy.
Yeah, that's
Reclaim October.
That's amazing. I mean, what both of you do is amazing. Creating a space for everyone, no matter what stage they're at, I think is very important. And I don't mean to trivialize it, but not everyone has a quote unquote sob story. And I think it's important to share the positive stories as well, because that may not be everyone's journey.
Yes.
And I think it's important to give people hope and that there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. Well, what we say is that we are very much into storytelling, and like everyone's story has value and everyone can share, and someone will be seen, whether it is the sob story or it's the triumph after cancer, or if it's just like, I did this thing, I had cancer and now I don't.
Yeah.
Like it's not always this big monumental thing, but there is an entry point for any and everyone to feel seen, which is like what we are all about.
So something that I just never considered was people's access to reproductive health who are cancer survivors or who are just experiencing it, and how difficult IVF is and access to IVF with cancer patients. Can you talk to me about the legal and political barriers that surrounds that and how we can help preserve fertility for those individuals?
I think, well, that's the thing, right? When we talk about like, are we seen in the medical system? Are we respected? Do people care? Whatever. And so I felt very much silenced and dismissed, even in my journey of like, oh, you're mid-30s, you have kids. Like, no one spoke to me that like having cancer can potentially eliminate the ability to have children on the other side of it. They keep telling you, you're going to get over it and live your best life. And I was just so focused on trying to live. So I didn't realize that having children was taken off the table by having kids. That was like another little twist of the knife, right? No one spoke to me about my reproductive health, how cancer would affect it. No one gave me the option about freezing eggs or even having that conversation with me. Like, it wasn't even presented. And if you're fighting for your life, you don't even know what you don't know. So I didn't ask it. And so that was part of the grief that I felt then, and that I'm still grieving now so many years later, was that was taken from me, the ability to have kids. It was a devastating blow. That's part of what we, again, in sharing the stories and having these conversations, is empowering breasties that at the appointments to advocate for their future selves in these appointments by having these conversations about how their reproductive journeys can be affected by being impacted by breast and GYN cancer.
Dealing with everybody that you talk to in the Breasties and in the community in general, have you seen improvements within the healthcare system, like compared to your experience back then to what it is now? Like, when you hear people talk about their experience, are they still dealing with the same resistance and the same inequities and just lack of information from their healthcare providers?
Absolutely. And I think what's so frustrating is that these things, like being able to have, is just seen as like privilege. And it's just like demonstrating how much your access can be affected by whether or not you get these things. Their privilege could be affected by whether you can have these things. And so like trying to get freezing, you need to have money. I've seen so many breasties that say like they need to have actual cash to pay for these things. And like they may have enough to freeze for a year. And then by year 2, they're at this now crossroads of like finding more money or else losing everything they worked hard for. And time is ticking. And so it is mind-boggling that it is still seen as, instead of like human right, it's seen as this like privileged thing that you may or may not get. So yeah, it's still extremely frustrating. Our breasties are finding it now time and time again. We have on our app so many conversations of people saying like, grants, anybody know anything? I'm desperate. Like, I was supposed to have my transfer. I had a breastie reach out. She was supposed to have her transfer the next day, and they canceled it the day before because insurance, like, she didn't get a pre-authorization. And so this is the like little window that she has, and she doesn't know what to do.
That's devastating. Oh my goodness. And you think with all of the talk when it comes to political legislation surrounding women's rights that IVF would be important.
One would think.
Yes, exactly.
Like, it's important for some things, but it doesn't extend to this.
Exactly. I hate that so much. So for people who want to be a part of the Breasties, how do they get access to the community? They go to your website. Where do they go? And I also heard you have a camp, so I want to hear all about that too.
Yeah. So we have so many different forms of support. We really believe that support should be as accessible as possible. We have free virtual programming every month, every week. There's different things that you can join. We have protected groups for BIPOC community members, LGBTQ plus community members, stage 4 community members. And then we also do in-person support, which is camp. And camp really came together because we started doing retreats as an organization. That's how we became a nonprofit. After these New York meetups we were having, we were like, wait, we just want more time together. So one of our co-founders had a house in the Poconos. So we had taken over the house for the weekend. We had 25 people fly in from all over the U.S. and some from outside the country. And we had shared it on social media, just like, look, here we are, on skiing on this mountain, snowboarding down this mountain. This local ski resort had given us like passes for the day. And we had just pulled our money together to get groceries and cook for everyone. And then when we came back, we had hundreds of DMs asking like, when's the next one? I have to be there.
Yeah.
And that's when we looked at each other and said like, wait, we can do more with this.
Yeah.
We need to do more with this. And we incorporated to be a nonprofit. And so we did a ton more retreats, but we always had 4 times the demand than we could support on retreats. So we had this idea of like, let's rent out a campsite. We'll have room for 500 people. And it filled up in 2 weeks.
Oh my goodness,
Yes.
that's amazing.
Yeah, that was 2019. And then, the pandemic kind of put in-person stuff on pause for a while. But then we brought camp back last year for the first time. And we had robust.
Oh, yeah. Packed to the gills. It was 500 last year, 600 this year of people impacted by breast and GYN cancer for 4 days and 3 nights of just like together time.
Yeah.
I mean, we just found that, especially as youngish or young at heart people navigating the space, that it was just a lot of the conferences were stuffy and like dimly lit, like flickering light, like places that were just humdrum. And so we were like, why not put all these experiences together where it's like important information being distilled, but also like community, but also the retreat vibe. And so that's what camp was. And I think we should really do it for 7 days. Not gonna lie, 4 is not enough. No, it's just so it's just so lovely because it's really a place. Again, it doesn't matter whether or not you have no support or you have tons of support. Being around people that get it, it just like puts everyone at ease. You see everyone's shoulders just drop the minute they walk in because they know they don't have to pretend like everything is all right.
Yeah.
Pretend that they're all taped up and healed, that they can walk around topless and know that it's not going to be a scandal because that person understands, hey, that port scar means that you had chemo. Like, you don't have nipples and it's okay. No nips, no problems, And so that's a kind of freedom that we are happy to provide for our community. And yeah, 1 camp per year is not enough, apparently, because the demand keeps growing. So yeah, you're definitely coming next year so you can experience it firsthand.
Yes, I would love to be a part of camp. The Breasties Camp, that's so exciting. Like the work that you all do is truly so inspiring, and it's amazing how you're creating a safe space for everyone. Like I'm fired up. Like
I see you activated.
Literally.
Well, I mean, we've just learned that even if you're quote unquote done with treatment or done with whatever it is, your journey, that it's survivorship is a lifetime.
Yeah.
And having questions is a lifetime. And your body's different. And so like what was a problem today wasn't 6 months ago. Like as someone who's 8 years out, I'm navigating frozen shoulder and I'm finding out, oh, this is a result of being in early menopause that like no one talked about. So I am very much invested in the community as well because I'm still getting information and resources. And so we're grateful to have this space and we're here for you in your journey whenever you need it. So you can peace out and come on back and we'll still be here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. And the information, I think, we were so grateful to have Michelle at camp this year from Bobbie speaking on a panel, sharing about the advocacy work that Bobbie does, that Bobbie's doing with the Breasties. And I think something we've seen is like the community wants information. There's such a misconception that like, too much information will scare people or it's going to be too much. And our community wants it. Like we bring researchers, top researchers, advocates, impactors, like to panels to have these conversations of like, here's the latest that you guys need to know about what's happening, in research on the Hill, like things that are impacting our daily lives. And just like creating that has been so monumental for the community because that access doesn't exist and it's benefited our lives tremendously.
Please tell me what is in store for the future of the Breasties.
Yeah, our October Bash. Sorry. We have an October fundraising event for community members that we're really excited about in New Jersey. And so maybe you should take a plane and come there. You should come to all the things, basically.
No, please.
No, we're really looking forward to having that and having just Breasties let loose, but our like long-term plan is more of the same. We really just want to empower people to feel confident navigating their health, whatever that looks like, and know that there's a support for them. So it's more of that, but yeah.
Yeah, I think what we said about camp, like the need is just tremendous. It's a double-edged sword. Like the community is incredible, but there's just such a huge need in the community. And we joke that like the community says jump and we say how high. And that's how it's always been. We would love to do multiple camps a year because even though we had 600 at camp this year, we had over 300 on the wait list.
Wow.
And so it breaks our hearts. We really believe like everybody needs support and deserves support. And our dream would be like to make camp free for everyone. Right now we do 250 scholarships. The cost is below at cost rate to attend, but like our dream would be to just expand the things we are doing so that everybody had access to these things.
Yeah.
Yes. And so how many breasties are out there?
Yes.
So many. I mean, we're proud to say like for camp, using camp as an example, people flying from South Africa, from Ireland, from Italy, from Paris to come to camp, from Delaware, from every place.
Everywhere.
And so the numbers, we would never be able to put a finger on how many. But we're just proud to know that we're there for them whenever they need.
Yes.
So, yes.
We also have a free app called the Breasties community app. And there's thousands of community members on the app, which is really like a safe space for community members to get virtual support. So if you can't make it to camp or, you have a question about your care or a surgery coming up, you can use the app to get support. And it's like the most popping app ever.
Oh my gosh.
There's like people sharing things every day, posting things. And we just really wanted a safe space because our community really did start on social media and on Instagram. We wanted a space that felt a little safer than that to share and to find support.
Yes, there's no algorithm. There's no likes. There's no performance. It's also a place that, because not everyone is public with their story. You don't want to be putting on Facebook your things so that like, the people, your haters from high school or your coworkers are all up in your business. At least there's a place that you can be free and ask your questions and not have that kind of fear of being outed.
Yeah.
So we're quite proud of it.
That's so important. The work you guys do is so important. And I'm so appreciative that you came here. Before we go, please tell us, you mentioned the app. That's amazing. But where else can we find you? Plug everything you want to.
Okay. No, not
the list out.
No, I mean, we're there for you wherever you need. So whether it's our Facebook group, it's the app, the Breasties, the _ Breasties and Instagram and on TikTok.
The Peak.
The Peak, yeah.
We have a media site called The Peak, which is kind of like our solution to bridging the information between like the medical world and the community. So we have medically reviewed resources. We have like how to do a self-breast exam, how to know you're normal. So that's kind of like our information center.
Yes.
Virtual programs, which you can find in the app. So weekly virtual meetups hosted by, we have social justice trained and trauma-informed community leaders who lead those spaces. We have Reclaim October in October. We're fundraising constantly. We have, we support stage 4 research. So there's a lot of
avenues.
Initiatives.
But if anyone's listening to this and it's like doesn't know where to start and just is mildly interested, we invite them to send us an email at hello@thebreasties.org and we'll take it from there.
Awesome. Well, Trish, Bree, thank you so much for coming on. I truly appreciate your time and how knowledgeable you all are about this subject and just sharing your journeys with our audience. It truly means a lot to me. So thank you so much for coming on. I truly appreciate it. And y'all out there, I will see you next time on another episode of Milk Drunk.